You were asking about the first day at the ballet. I was thinking about that overnight. We were at the Westport Allen Center, which is just by that Sunfresh on Westport Road, and it was a grade school. So the big dance studio, or the largest of very small studios, had been, I think, maybe the basketball court for grade school kids, or perhaps later the faculty lunchroom. And we were constrained. It was not nearly big enough. So we begin our days with a training session, a ballet class. It's an academic class, technical class, where the fundamentals are practiced rigorously, and that's always the way of warming up, but also improving your technique. And looking back on that first day, I realized I made that class very difficult, like overly so. And people's eyeballs kind of popped. And some came up to me afterwards, some of the women, and said, well, that was good that you sort of set the bar that high for the first day back, because they'd been off all summer. And generally you would, in the fall first day, limit some of the more technically demanding steps, but I kind of threw them all out there. I'm not even sure why I did that. I was probably a little nervous. But it also, in retrospect, did send the message that we're going to move this up. And you're at a terrific technical level, but now let's start high and go from there. Todd Bolender was a very distinguished artist, and I knew him in New York City. I'd been in one of his ballets when I was in the Joffrey Ballet. I was 17 years old, and he made a piece called Time Cycle, which he'd produced when he was directing in Germany. So this was at the Joffrey Ballet, 1969, and I got to meet him. I didn't have a very big part. I had, in fact, the smallest part because I was the new kid in town. And I immediately liked him. I saw that he was quite pensive. He was a very thoughtful man. And of course, we knew that he'd had an extraordinary career, particularly with Ballet Caravan and then New York City Ballet, two companies that were started by George Balanchine. So Todd was a muse for George Balanchine, and that is a really high distinction in the field of dance. Later, I could identify with him because I had been a muse for Twyla Tharp and some other choreographers at the Joffrey. And that's a very particular kind of relationship that a dancer develops with a leading choreographer. You are indispensable, really. You have to kind of read their mind, be one step ahead of the choreographer, and provide elements of surprise in the creative process so that it can live and breathe and become something whole. So Todd and I had this in common, and that's something that we didn't really even talk about that much, perhaps a bit, but we knew that that's a particular kind of dedication to the art of ballet and a very privileged position to be in as a dancer. So we shared a lot in common, and Todd continued to live here after I started directing, and we were able to continue and develop our relationship as colleagues and friends. And therefore the transition between his period of time here and mine was very smooth, warm, and productive. Well, in terms of what I'd like to be remembered for, I think Tom Sawyer will be remembered as a three-act ballet that was created here on this company. I made it a couple of years ago, and what's unusual about it is, first of all, the score is an original score by an American composer, Maury Yeston. We based it on Mark Twain's famous novel, and American company, I created it. So it's actually, we think, the first all-American full evening narrative, or you could say story ballet with an American score. So There had been other one-act ballets that are infamous, like Rodeo, Agnes de Mille's Rodeo with the Aaron Copland score, and Fancy Free, which is on the ballet season next year, Jerome Robbins' great work with Leonard Bernstein's music. Those are one-act ballets, story ballets about American culture. And so Tom Sawyer is significant both historically and in regards to the ongoing repertory of Kansas City Ballet, but it made the national news and was acclaimed in the New York Times and so on. And this is really helpful to not only put us on the map, but give us a spot in history. So I guess if I had to pick one thing, that's my proudest achievement. And you were asking about a successor. I would hope that my successor has a similar experience to the one I just described with myself and Todd, that there's not just a passing of the torch, but I could serve as in an advisory capacity. I won't be living in Kansas City, but the world's quite small now in terms of getting in touch with each other. And I would hope that that transition will be thoughtfully created and open, and about the largest topics, which are obviously future of dance, how dance fits into the American culture, and specifically here in Kansas City, what are the challenges, what are the achievements that we've accomplished, and how can we now build upon the tradition that's been established. I stood on Todd's shoulders, the successor will stand on both of our shoulders. My record album collection has been contributed to the Marr collection at UMKC. And I combined Todd Bolender's collection with mine, so it's huge. I kind of hope we could have kept it all together so people would see what our musical tastes were. But it had to be categorized, so jazz records went to that section, classical to another. But I was thinking about, do I have a favorite record album? I mean, as a kid, sure, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, because of the cover for one thing. But I have a Bobby Watson recording, and I don't quite remember when I bought it. And we're working with Bobby Watson right now on Energy Made Visible, a new work at Kansas City Ballet playing this weekend. And I'd like to pull that out again and listen to it. Phil Woods is on that collection, and Bobby. And how did I know about Bobby when I created that, when I bought that record and when he had created it? I'm not sure. So I'd like to play it and see what had intrigued me and circle back to my first exposure to his music.